Good evening. Welcome to the Municipal Services and Environmental Sustainability Committee for Cleveland Heights. I'll take the role now and explain why we're short one person. Vice Chair Jim Posh is on his way from San Francisco. His plane is arriving shortly. We may not have him here for this meeting. Member Davita Russell
Here.
and Chair Gail Larson is here.
Sorry for the noise.
We also have Sustainability Coordinator Andy Witang is here with us, and then our guest this evening is John Barber. And I want to explain why we're talking about metrics tonight, because we've talked in the Climate and Environmental Sustainability Committee about building metrics and having metrics to give council data and the mayor data when making decisions for the city in terms of expending money and what we're going to invest in. So John reached out to me a couple weeks ago and he said, would you like me to help you with identifying metrics that could be reportable to council and to the administration residents? And I said, yes, because it's really important. So that being said, I would like you to start the conversation, John, please.
All right, well, thank you and good evening. One of the things that has come up during this election season is an awful lot of comments about fixing this and transparency and how has the city functioned in the past and how is it going to function in the future. And a lot of the comments have been very, very subjective comments. And I thought about that, about how a new administration now and a new administration in January might present to council and to the residents, how is the city functioning? And how do we say that in such a way that two things happen? First of all, perhaps we can get to an agreement on what metrics will we use for a successfully functioning city. What metrics will we use? How often will they be reported? And then track those metrics and have those metrics be available on the city website. I used as my example just because I do like this. It is still in the stages of construction, of course. And this is the City of Cleveland open data. So you go to the City of Cleveland website, and the City of Cleveland has an amazing array of statistics, some useful, perhaps some not so useful, but they're all out there. Many of them can be downloaded by residents or by anybody who wants to. And it provides a forum for those conversations. I think the other issue that a dashboard would help with is, as I talked with Gail about the possibility of what reports will council be asking for, and what reports will help take questions away from council. And so if there are, in the eyes of council, repeated questions that are asked on a regular basis, can we put the answers to those up on a dashboard so that council is not constantly being asked, how many open potholes do we have and where are they in the city? Right? We know that the superintendent of streets at one point last year said there are 205 open potholes. That was a very well kept secret for the most part. But at the same time, if I listened to the conversation in the community, it was no potholes are getting fixed. And that wasn't true. But there was nothing that bridged the gap between nothing is getting fixed and we have 205 open potholes and we are 4 employees short in the pothole fixing division, whatever it was. And so I went out to the City of Cleveland website to see how they looked at it, how they addressed that kind of thing. And a couple of things came out. And so I would like to ask, as we approach the budget season now, to ask this committee, because I think MSES has the most dashboardable, the most dashboardable things to measure. And that is, how is Public Works performing relative to what we asked them to do? And where are we with environmental sustainability things in terms of CARP and other things like that? Because we've had conversations in the climate and environmental sustainability meeting about putting dashboards together. I come before you tonight to say, as we look at the budget process for 2026, please put in the budget a position, possibly, or an enhancement to existing positions so that we can have an internal resource who is looking overall at the city and saying, what metrics do we want to measure? How do we want to present those to council? And how do we want to present those to the public? I would like to avoid the solution of saying we're going to go hire a consultant to tell us what we already know. I would prefer to have committees like this say, here are the things that we would like to know. We'd like to know them on a monthly basis. For example, for finance, on a quarterly basis, perhaps for Public Works, on whatever frequency it is for environmental sustainability. But I think the council members know what they want to get reports on and how often they want to get those reports. I don't think we need a consultant to come in and tell us what we already know. But I would like to have something put in the budget that says, we're going to start developing this with the anticipation that at some point it will eventually roll out to the residents.
Would you envision the staff person being, they would have to be knowledgeable in building dashboards and setting up metric data, right?
Yes,
So,
and I will use as an example, and this is just one example, and that is Ken in planning. Ken
Bernard.
I knew that. Ken Bernard in planning is an expert with GIS systems and moving data into GIS systems. I gave him an Excel spreadsheet of deer car accidents over the years in Cleveland Heights and asked him, is it possible to have this up on GIS? He dawdled. 30 minutes later, it was back in my inbox. And I was able to bring it to Jim's public hearing about what do we do about deer in Cleveland Heights. I think there are plenty of people that we may be able to bring in, or at least one other person, or use Ken's talent to begin putting dashboards together and having them be available. It really isn't rocket science so much as it is agreeing on what needs to be tracked and how often. So the first one, to me anyway, is city metrics. And that includes things like finance. And where are we with finance? Where are we against budget? What does the finance committee hear on a hopefully monthly basis or more often?
Would be nice.
Going forward, the financial reports are updated monthly. Why aren't they made public? I would like to see so that residents aren't asking questions about where are we against budget. Another one is staffing. Where are we with staffing? How many budgeted vacancies? How many budgeted positions are there? How many vacancies are there? Things like that, so that by department, the residents understand where their tax dollars are going and where they perhaps aren't being spent and could be spent. And particularly that staffing one helps, I think, will help residents understand if something is falling behind, particularly in a department like Public Works, and they see that 4 positions are vacant in streets and we're falling behind on potholes, it's not a willful act. It is right now we don't have the resources to keep up with the potholes. But we make that public, and we make that as public as we possibly can. How often is it updated? I'm not sure. Monthly, but that's to be determined. So city metrics are one thing, and the easy ones like how many miles of streets do we have and so on and so forth. There are lots of easy things that fit into that. Number 2, I thought of were the service metrics. And the service metrics are things like potholes and streetlights, bulk trash pickup, net tree plantings. How many trees were removed last quarter and how many trees were planted last quarter? As we look at tree canopy, we shouldn't be waiting a year to hear from the city forester about what was our net tree canopy. So they're city service metrics that I believe lend themselves very, very well again to public dashboards. And again, I hope that that takes the burden off city staff and council people who aren't being asked questions all the time about it. So service metrics. Number 3 is getting some reports out of the access system, which I think is MAC,
Yes.
right? The Mayor's Action Center. Mayor's Action Center. Right now, a concern of mine personally is that access requests are closed when the problem is assigned, not when the problem is solved. We saw that again this morning on Bradford with a dead deer that was assigned to Howie. The problem was closed and the dead deer was there when I drove by this evening. And my hope is that we will be able to encourage Todd to not close things until they are resolved, but also do aging. How long are problems open? And here again, I'm just going to use the sort of the easy example of potholes and say, how long does it take to get a pothole fixed? We should be sharing that with the residents, and Public Works should be saying, this is the situation we have. It shouldn't be a secret to do that. I think.
I'm sorry. Todd may already have within this Access Cleveland Heights system the opportunity or the ability, software-wise, to produce this kind of data. I'm not sure why they decided to close it before it was actually resolved. That was, at first they had them open until they were resolved, and now they're closed before they resolve. So I can actually ask the mayor about that, looking into that. But we may have some data sets that he can share more often than he does.
I would have to think that there are, and it's just a matter of council and the residents saying, please run the reports. I would be flabbergasted if a system like Access didn't have some aging and some, how many reports were opened by category, how many reports were closed by category, and how long were they open.
Yeah.
I would be amazed if that system didn't have it. But I think there must have been some internal decision that said not now or not yet or whatever. But I'd like to see that. And I think that will also increase the trust in the system. If people see that things just aren't arbitrarily closed, but they're closed when the problem is solved, when the street light is fixed, when the pothole is fixed, when the deer carcass is picked up.
So you recommend having a person to do this work?
Well, I believe in this part that this is something that if it's asked of Todd, he will probably say, oh yes, I can do that and I will do that.
Okay.
And I think that, for example, this committee would want to see anything related to municipal services, would like to see that aging report and some historical data that says things are getting better or things are getting worse, particularly at budget time. When Colette comes in here and says, I'd like to ask for 5 more people, part of the foundation of that is to say, we think we can close problems faster, and here's the data to back that up. It's a data-driven decision instead of, I need 5 more people, or whatever it is.
So let me come in here. So I've been listening, I'm sure you can see, trying to see where you're coming from and where you're going to with, the metrics and the idea and all of that. First of all, so let me start first with the Mark, and then the metrics with that and all of that. I think that's more procedural, right? That speaks more to the procedure that we have in place regarding how we report problems, to how we get them resolved and how we communicate it. If we have an open ticket, right? That's just something that needs to be fixed regarding, do we close it when we assign it to someone to attend to, or we close it when we have somebody actually working on it and has completed their work on it. So that is something we can address, with, having a stipulated procedure in place, which looks at how we report problems, how we address them, to how we circle back to whoever brought the concern, and provide them with an update regarding the work that has been done. So I think I'm not too sure whether as at now, the procedure is once we have it assigned to maybe Public Works, we mark it in the system as, done, completed and things like that. That is something that we might want to look into. And so is this just like, if you have a form in Google Doc, for example, right? And you are all editing and working on a document together. If I have a comment and I tag somebody in the Google Doc, for example, when the person comes to it and addresses that concern, the next thing is the person marks it as resolved, right? So I'm using Google system as a parallel to what problem you're talking about here. So this is something we can address procedurally. We make sure that when we have a problem reported, we don't mark it as resolved in code, right? Or completed or done, right? Until work has actually been done on it and we have gotten feedback. And sometimes we can even include a picture, right?
Yes.
In some cases, right? So like, let's say potholes, right?
Right.
If it's fixed, we can get a picture of it. That's when we mark it as completed and we put it in the system. And whoever made the request, right? So let's say John Barber makes the request. When it's done, an email should be sent back to John Barber saying, this is it, it's completed with a picture and all of that. So that is something we can address with a firm procedure, in place. I don't know if the current procedure says when we assign it to someone, whether it's done or not, we mark it in the system as resolved. That is something we might want to find out from Todd.
But we do now. And I get
So-
an email saying it's closed,
It's closed,
but it's only been assigned.
but it's only been assigned. So then we can have
Reviewer is still there.
Yeah, so we can have a procedure which says, in the system built, which says, when we assign it to someone, we don't mark it as resolved because we don't know whether it has been done or not. So when it's done, that's when we actually, it's just like, and I'm trying to use a lot of parallels here because what you're talking about is done, it's simple, right? So let's say somebody delivers a product to your doorstep. When they do it these days, they take a picture, right? And then they send it to you, right? Saying it's delivered and it's there. So this is what we want to do. When it's done, that's when we want to send a message
Yes.
back to the people and say, it's done, this is a picture showing it's done and things like that. So that's more
Yes.
procedural.
Yes,
And-
Amy.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah. So we
So
might
it
want
could
to
be marked,
revisit.
it could be marked assigned, once
Yes,
it's given to someone, and then once it's completed, it can be
mark
marked
as
completed.
resolved or
Yeah.
completed, whatever term we choose to use.
But
And what
also,
that-
if we build a data set like John's talking about,
Mhm.
cumulatively,
Mhm.
we would be able to see on a quarterly or monthly, however often the report could be put together of cases when they're open and how long it took for the resolution. Because we're going to leave it open. If we could leave it open until it's resolved, then you have that aging built into the data collection itself. So,
Right.
yeah.
Those reports now would be misleading because they
Yeah.
would reflect
That is done.
closed within one day.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's not possible in most
Right.
cases
Yeah.
to
So
attend to the problem.
that's why I think, I would like
Mhm.
council and the residents too to have access to those reports that say this is how long it takes in general.
Mhm.
There'll always be bad weather that interferes with this or interferes with that.
Or
Or more
Maybe there's
complicated cases, well,
Or more
would skew the
complicated
data as well.
Yeah, so okay, we have to look at the balance of things because it will be dependent on the specific type of problem, right?
Yes,
Some problems, like in this case, I don't know the procedure, but whether they just refer it to somebody and then the person goes there and picks it up
Yes.
and that's it, right? So when
Yes.
it was assigned, we should have waited to get to it and have it marked as resolved when we have actually addressed the problem, right?
Right.
Until then, saying is done or completed
Yes.
doesn't provide any information regarding whether it's done or not. So anyway,
The fourth one is projects. And here I have things like Vision Zero, the Leopardo project, and looking for council to say, what is it that you want to know and when? And is that, is there a section on the Cleveland Heights equivalents for special projects, or are they merged in with departments or whatever, that says, this is where we are, this is where we're going, this is how much money we've spent, this is how much money we haven't spent, and so on. But again, when I look at the city of Cleveland has a specific page, I'm sorry, I didn't bring it with me, has a specific page on Vision Zero and says, this is what we're seeing in terms of pedestrian and bike incidents in the city of Cleveland by year, locations, and it's all part of Vision Zero, but it's by year, by locations, and by, I think there's a severity measure, which gets a bit grim, but you have some sort of severity measure as well. We're then putting teeth behind Vision Zero. We're then saying we're taking Vision Zero seriously, and this is what we want to report out on Vision Zero. So those are the kinds of things where it may be a separate section on the city metrics or city dashboards for projects. And in a nutshell, that's what I wanted to talk about today, was to say, please put something in the budget that says we want to have resources dedicated to start putting these dashboards together and make them public. But a big part of it is also, what do you want to know? And how often do you want to know it?
Would there be anything coming out of planning and development that you would want to know that would give you data information, performative data information, right?
Yeah. Project timelines,
Yeah.
those type of things, and I probably wouldn't want anything but maybe quarterly.
yes,
I think
quarterly is
anything
the
more-
best.
I think anything more than quarterly.
It's
would be
too minute,
nice.
it's micromanaging, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think this is very much something we have been driving at. I brought this exact same proposal to the communications department. I talked about, particularly with the climate action and resilience plan, because we have tons and tons of strategies we're already working on. And we wanted to put this information on the website. It boiled down to staffing issues and the challenge with reassigning people or adding this extra layer of work to what people do, as their routine work. And so that is something that in our emails we showed tons and tons of communication regarding that. So that was the challenge I identified. That now, if you see a city like Cleveland Heights, Cleveland, for instance, if you talk about sustainability is a whole office, right? It's a huge. It's not one person like we have in Cleveland Heights. So it's a lot of people working on different aspects of the climate action and resilience plan, which recently they updated, to reflect the work that we did with our climate action and resilience plan. So I won't get into it, but previously Cleveland did a climate action plan. Now they've done a climate action and resilience plan. It's not the same thing, I know our consultant tried to move some things around what a climate action plan is and the climate action and resilience plan is still two different things. But what remains is having that dedicated person, right? And I use Cleveland as an example for their sustainability team. I can count about, from who I know, at least more than 10 people. I can say at least 10 people working there. And they have one person maybe focusing on carbon. Tim Kovac works on the carbon emission side of things, for example. So all the metrics that you have there, for example, and I'll talk about the Leopardo contract, but in our climate action and resilience plan, we have one metric, potential KPIs regarding energy efficiency and all of that. And in there, we have number of lights at city facilities replaced with LEDs.
Mm.
Annual savings, energy savings from LED conversion in kilowatt hours. Then we have annual cost savings from LED conversion. Now, from the Leopardo contract, we have all this information that can come out of there.
Mhm.
So we are using the Leopardo contract presently to address these metrics.
Okay.
Now, what is left, and I address that part, which is what remains, is having a dedicated person, because the communications department, as it stands now, doesn't have the capacity to put all this information on the website. But if you're working on something like this, and you'll see that also for the CSAP plan, which is the Transportation Safety Action Plan, right? You also find that in the, there's another plan, I think it's CSAP, and there's another, and then the Park Master Plan, for example, right?
Mhm.
Active transportation plan.
Yeah, one is active transportation and one is CSAP, so safety and then active transportation. But from there are metrics we've already defined as part of the Climate Action and Resilience Plan.
Mhm.
But we can't put all that information up there because there's no capacity in-house to do that. Now, this won't be something that Ken Bernard handles, because Ken Bernard is more on the geospatial analysis side of things. And I do geospatial analysis as well, so I understand where his role is and where this particular thing is. This one calls for an IT person who will build a simple, basic structure. We can call it a dashboard, right? But it's broken down by the various components of the city's work. So there's public works, there's planning, there's sustainability, there is even law, for example. There's parks and rec, right? And out of there are things that metrics which we've identified already,
Mhm.
which needs to be posted to the website.
Mhm.
So right now, what I'm working with them, given the constraints with putting all that information there, is that we want to put this is just for starters. We want to put all this in an Excel spreadsheet because the capacity is not there yet.
Mhm.
An Excel spreadsheet, and then the other part is we'll have them broken down by the sectors I just mentioned, energy, waste sector, because we have the municipal composting pilot going on right now,
Okay.
right? All the information, we have information which we've started gathering, but it needs to go onto the website so people can see it. So that's where we are. I think the missing piece in all of this is having a dedicated person in communications, right? Who works maybe closely with Steve or somebody in that background who can put this information on this website, where you click on each. Let's say you click on one strategy or one thing, whether it's transportation, and under that you find things to do with the CSAP or things to do with the active transportation plan or Green Street, right? Or whatever it is. And when you click on that, it will give you a breakdown of the metrics.
Mhm.
Then within each metric, you have the numbers populated, which we update quarterly. So behind the scenes, we'll be collecting the data in bits, we aggregate, and then we post it to the website.
I hear you saying, Andy, that it sounds like a request for a staff person to do this
Yes,
is not inappropriate. It is appropriate.
it is appropriate, yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And the directors would put together the information and then give it to the dedicated person.
Yes, so the dedicated person will not be computing the data or will not be collecting the data
Mhm.
by themselves. But then all the various departments will provide that data because we already have the shell, the structure on the website. So let's say from our municipal composting program, we currently have about 350, the last count, people in there who have signed up. Now, the last time we had about, what was the metric? The pounds, the tonnage of waste we diverted from the landfill,
Mhm.
right? So that information is there, which we'll be aggregating over a period of time. So let's say from when we started the program, maybe a month or so ago, we've collected that data. We collect for the next month, we collect for the third month, the fourth month. All that information, we put it together and it's on the website.
One of the things we hear from Director Hairston in finance is that, like, the most recent reports that he's given us for our financials
Mhm.
are on Excel spreadsheets. And he has said it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not user friendly on the current website to post up those reports. Is the administration talking about making it a more simplified process so that it would be efficient for this person, let's just say we hire somebody, to be able to take the data coming out of the various departments and post it on the website on a regular, periodic basis?
Yeah. So, and I don't know, maybe I can speak to that here. But when you have information in Excel format,
Yeah.
that's a lot of cells.
Yeah,
Right?
that's why it's called Excel.
Yeah. So a lot of cells, you have to slide from one end
Oh,
to the
yeah.
end and all of that. But there are key data sets that the public is interested in,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, the municipal composting program, right? We have tons and tons of data, where the people who signed up for are and all of that, right?
And you wanna keep it simple too for the residents.
Yeah, it should be something you look at and you know what, is there, right? So back to the finance example, out of the Excel sheet, there will be key information, right, that everybody needs to see, right?
Mhm.
So the Excel sheet can be there as an attached document,
Okay.
right, for people who want to dig into it and find out, because there'll be people who want to find, the correlation between this and that and all complex, right, information. But then if you want to find, how much did we raise, for the city revenue-wise, that is something that should be right there,
Mhm.
popping out. So we can have the Excel spreadsheet attached, but we can also have key information. That's why we usually call them key performance indices,
It
right?
would be nice if there were graphics that also could be
Yeah.
put together, because I think a lot of people are visual like I am. I like to see the graphs, the pie charts,
Mm-hmm.
that indicate how many residents are, let's just take composting as an example, how many residents could be benefiting or using composting and how many are, and then watch it grow over time,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. So, is there anything else that you had on your mind?
Well, I appreciate what Andy said about what statistics are currently lurking, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
lurking in the background. I wanted to reiterate, perhaps unnecessarily, that it also comes down to, as you are looking at the city and saying, I would like to know, what is it and where is it? And if you want to know it, do the residents want to know it? And so we have a raft of information that's available, but does it fit what council wants to see to make its decisions, particularly at budget time? That's the place that I see most, so much of the value coming is at budget time, saying, here we see a trend we don't like or a current state we don't like, and we have the numbers to back it up, so that when we have the council discussion itself about a budget item, it's not I heard, it's I see. Because it's that I see that I think we don't have enough of now, at least as a resident. When I browse the website, when I talk with people, I always hear I heard. So that's what I wanted to share tonight.
Is our website really up to date where it can hold the capacity of a lot of different tools and
Yes.
a lot of different
Yeah,
things
lots
to
of
make
them.
it more
Yes.
simple?
Yeah, we use Civic Plus to host our website, which is also who does my software for meeting management. They have a lot of different tools out there that,
Yeah.
they're really good at integration.
There's so much available
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that John mentioned that, so that it's not, I heard and all that. Because I've heard, for instance, from a council member mentioning that, there's no work happening on the climate action and resilience plan, right? Now, as to where that council member got that information from without checking with the city sustainability and resilience coordinator, that's another thing altogether. But we want this information, right, put on the website. Because sometimes it can even be on the website and people don't even refer to it. That's one. But we want this information on the website. We want to provide updates, whether on our social media page and, e-news and all of that. So people can know, or people will be made aware, right, that this information is available. Because there are people who genuinely want to know.
True.
Yeah, but they don't know that it's available, right? So I think putting that information there and making it so easily accessible in a format that is easy to read, easy to pick the details that you want, is what the city is lacking at this point. And as to whether there are different software that can handle the volume of data and all of that, there are tons and tons of software. We talked, Councillor Larson talked about running reports and all of that. Some of them have the capacity to run reports. I worked, when I was in consulting, I worked on some work project where it was trees, right? You could select from a geography the number of trees there, and then the selected trees, you can run a report on how much canopy coverage they are provided right there, and then you will see it. So there are tons and tons of software capacities, that we can use. Yeah.
May I add unnecessarily, I'm sure, but one of the great things about Cleveland Heights residents are, if there's a vacuum, the residents will fill that vacuum. A dashboard can help fill the vacuum so that the residents aren't filling it with the I heard
Yes,
or I think or whatever. Because we are so creative in Cleveland Heights.
we are.
Were you say something?
Yeah, they're actually, so I haven't really looked a whole lot into our the actual background of the C-Click-Fix 311 CRM that is also hosted by Civic Plus that we
I
use,
actually like the
that
icons.
Todd used. There actually is, I guess, report card monitoring that assesses issues and how you're performing against service level agreements. So there should be some functionality within there that we could pull some data out of that you guys are already talking about. It's just probably a matter of setup and working with our rep to basically make sure that we're utilizing it to its full extent.
And so, okay, go ahead, John.
I hope this has just been a little bit useful in terms of one resident's perspective, because I think we have a window open here that I would like to try to get some more resources and try to get some more information into your hands as well as into the hands of the residents.
And I know that Vice President Russell and I can make a case for asking for a staff person for this when we're in budget hearings. Would communications be the best spot for that?
That's what I was gonna ask.
I would think so,
This is going to be communications.
Because they're the ones that really could, they're in charge of what's our website if we're putting this out there for residents. It makes
What
sense.
would it be titled? What should it be titled?
Smart person.
Yeah.
Nerd.
I don't know the different
There must be a
titles they have, but even under one, whether it's communication specialist or community engagement specialist or whatever they have, within that person can have a clear job description, which involves collecting the data and from the various departments and then putting it out there and interacting and running reports and monitoring the software, the site, and all of that.
I would also like
Community metrics analyst, there you go.
Did you see the detail of the salary survey, salary evaluation?
Yeah.
In there should have been job descriptions, usually a 1-paragraph job description under each title. So for example,
saw the
excuse me, Andy, but sustainability and resiliency coordinator, in the salary survey, there would have been a paragraph that said, talks like this, looks like this, walks like this, and so on. There will be data analyst positions listed in that with salaries and some description of duties that collectively we would say that's the person that we want working.
I also wonder, when you talk about what the residents want, if we could put together just a short, could even just be fill in the blank, survey to send out to them, because we have cooperation from the community relations department now. Even after, if we get somebody signed, if we get somebody hired to do that, they could run the survey and see what is it, and then report back to council. What is it that residents really want to know? Phrasing it so that it would create a scenario so people don't understand what kind, some examples of data we're looking at, and then people start to think and then respond.
And it's also your incoming phone calls and emails.
Yeah.
And what are you being? I saw that. What are and what are you being asked that is standard enough information that we can start saying to the residents, please check here, please look here. If you want to know about streetlight replacement, look here. We have 3,400 streetlight bulbs in Cleveland Heights, and we've replaced this many, and we're fighting with First Energy. You know, there's just there.
Can they replace mine so that it's not so bright in my window?
That's on.
We're working on it,
Working on
but
it.
it's but
Yeah.
you know, I think that to me,
No, it's a great idea.
Your
We
input
really
is
need to- we
your
really
input
need
is
that.
critical.
Yeah.
And you have more incoming data than anybody.
I think it would
Right.
actually free up, help the staff as well.
Yes. I think defining the potential or the KPIs will be something that, for starters, we can have an advisory group or a consultative group
Then it
or,
backs up your work when people are saying that
yeah.
this is not happening. You can say,
Exactly.
Right,
Look on the
here's the
website,
numbers,
here's
here's
the
the actual,
Exactly. Yeah. So what we can do is that the departments can define what exactly the KPIs
mhm,
that pertains to their work.
mhm,
We put that together. We share it with the community. We ask the community to
okay.
provide some more
Don't get in
information.
trouble, don't get in trouble.
Oh,
We
no, I
we
think-
giving them some more
I know.
work to do, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's
Think it'd be
fine.
simple?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's I don't think there's a big issue with that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because the data is already available.
Okay.
All we need to do is synthesize the data, pull it out,
pull it out, yeah.
and then show what we want to showcase to the public. So I don't think it's complicated at all.
Oh, great.
I look in my notes and I see one more item that I just wanted to mention tonight. It's very quick, since I know you have another party at 7:30. We the city don't need to reinvent everything.
Mhm.
There will be places where we want to say, if you're concerned about bacterial contamination in the Dugway, which we hear about in Cumberland Park, we get that from the county. The county takes that measurement. The county has that data. We don't need to do anything other than link to that data
Right.
and go to the county and say, make it accessible.
Well, so
We
the
had-
search engine would help with that, right?
Well, we want it to be as tightly linked as possible.
So within perhaps a department, if you clicked on it, you could see the water quality of the Dugway at this point. I mean, there could be a choice to make.
Correct. Yes. So there are all sorts of things where there's data out there and we may want to just link to it and not ask, let's create a whole new
Mhm.
effort. Thanks for your time.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome.
And
Thank
Yeah.
you, thank you.
Unless anybody has anything
Any-
else.
Yeah, well, I'll just mention this in closing. I think to John's point, there are already data sets which we are not going to create as the primary people creating that data. We can rely on secondary data because for every data, there's primary data and there's secondary data.
Mhm.
We are not going to go and recreate data that is already worked on by an authoritative body, like let's say, for example, ODOT. So where ODOT has data on our streets and the metrics and all of that, crash data, whatever it is, we're not going to task people to go create primary data where primary data already exists.
Yeah.
So all we will be doing is creating or generating data based on the tons of data that is already available
Right,
and just pulling out the relevant data that we want to showcase to our community.
okay.
So if it's a particular stretch, and I know John talked about miles of street and all of that, that's already ODOT data. And, even with our GIS, we can just, select all the data, look at the miles, aggregate it, and we know. So we are not going to measure
Right.
the roads and all of that. No, we can use all these geospatial tools. So where possible, we rely on primary data
Mhm.
without recreating it and
Yeah.
all that. Even
Makes
with the street light project, and I know there was some mention Adi talked about, brightness of lights, so Leopardo relies on primary data generated by First Energy, right? Because Leopardo, as an engineering firm, is not going to go out there and count all the poles and do all that. They're going to rely on primary data,
Right,
which is owned and with all the database and all of that by First Energy. So even in projects like that, they rely on primary data where it's available. So if we want to showcase that, we just have to reference the primary data, pull out the salient information and showcase it.
Mhm.
So it's quite simple.
Okay, thank you so much, John, for getting this
Thank you.
conversation started. And
Yeah.
I think we, as the committee reps here today,
Yeah,
that we
it's good
can
information.
put that information together and I'll look up the name of that, a potential title for that
Yeah.
person along with the job description, so we could propose it. It probably would be a salary range as well on the Archer study.
Yeah.
There should be,
We
there
could
should be,
propose that.
it should be pretty current.
Thank you for coming, Andy, and I'm gonna adjourn this meeting at 7:17.